In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We hope you find our episodes inspiring, motivating, positive, and thought-provoking. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 94 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is questions. Our quote of the day comes to us from W. Edwards Deming. Without questions, there is no learning. I'm very excited to bring you today's episode. I met our guest a couple of weeks ago at an event where I was speaking. What intrigued me about this gentleman was the fact that he was listening to the speakers so intently and taking copious notes. With 2 Guinness Book World Records, currently working on 2 PhDs, and writing his 4th book, the word excuse is not in Chris Bolger's vocabulary. I think you will really enjoy today's episode as Chris shares with us his very unique beliefs, but more importantly, how they work for him and his clients. Chris also happens to be one of the hardest working guys I know. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Chris, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Honor is all mine, my friend. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
I've been born ready. Let's do this.
I knew you'd say that. So the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves or their dreams. And I was curious if you had either a story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you and you could have given up, but you didn't.
Oh, man. I feel like that's my whole life. There's one story. I guess for me, it was like a turnaround story. The only reason, and this story I don't tell often because I feel like it's so overdone. And it's so funny. Like I lived this rough period of my life. And then I see so many people in marketing nowadays, like trying to use it to make money off of. And I'm like, damn it. Okay. And then, like, for example, the homeless to not homeless story. Like I have one of those too. But, when I hear someone say, oh, I was homeless for a few months. I was sleeping in my car. I was sleeping in a friend's house. I'm like, man, only a couple months? Man, you mean you had a car? That's amazing. That's the life. So back when I was 16 to 18 years old, I was homeless for about 2 years. And this was due to anxiety and depression that I had my whole life. In high school, although I was a little bit of an athlete, I still had over 1,000 panic attacks on record in the 4 years I was in high school. Before then and after then, a whole lot more than 1,000. Living a normal life was not like on my plate at all. From the very young age that I was told, by parents and authority figures that I was not going to be like anybody else because I had this issue called anxiety. And in grammar school, I couldn't have the door shut in fear that I would be trapped. And I was under constant attack, or so it felt like. And there was a moment where I was in conflict with myself in every area of my life and I had a choice to make. So, long story short, what happened was I ended up being homeless as a bad decision. And at the time, I was with someone who was also abusive in my relationship, physically, mentally, sexually. It was pretty traumatizing. And it was I was sleeping on an armchair between 2 houses. And every day was fucking horrible, bro. It was for a solid year, I cried every single night. And I had almost no support. I had a couple of friends, but they couldn't really help that much, so it wasn't really sustainable. I worked as a fitness trainer at a gym off commissions, and if you have social anxiety, it's probably not the best job to have since that's the job that feeds you. And if you can't make any money there, then you just plain don't eat. And on average, I would usually profit about $12 a month, which if you do the math, you can't buy me any calories with $12 a month. And any other money I made went to my relationship because that's the kind of person I was back then. And I remember on an armchair, I thought back to a time when I was 5. And when I was 5, I remember playing with my toys, watching television, and my parents were fighting in the other room. And always fighting about the same thing, always about money or some this or that. Money was always usually the foundational piece. And on TV, my dad worked 3 to 4 jobs, sometimes 4 jobs in the summertime. My mom didn't work because she had anxiety and she never left the house. Do you see a connection yet? And on the TV was Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. And Bugs Bunny gets a hypnosis kit to hypnotize Elmer Fudd to go after Daffy Duck instead of Bugs Bunny. And I was inspired. I thought, you know what could be like, I wish I had that superpower. What if I could say one phrase to just change the way somebody acts? Maybe then somebody will listen to me. So I get the courage to get up and I walk into the other room. I'm 5 years old now, and I stand up and I go in between. I walk in between. I push both my parents away. I step right in between them, who are yelling at each other. I push them both away and I say, "You two are acting like a bunch of kids." And I thought that would be pretty hysterical. I mean, as an adult, I think that's still pretty charismatic. But they both turned towards me, and they both told me why they were right in their argument with each other, their 5-year-old son. And I didn't realize this, but at the time, that imprinted on me. And that became the blueprint of my life up until that moment. So there I was on this armchair, now 18 years old, completely broken. Like I've completely given up on life. And I'm sitting there watching YouTube videos. And these were talking cat videos. And by the 6 or 7 talking cat video, I was like, you know what? I wonder if hypnosis is real. Because I was told like magic, it's not real. I type in hypnosis in the little search bar and I get video after video, page after page, article after article, person after person to talk to. And it was real. So I found out what Skype was. I downloaded Skype. I contacted people from Cape Town, Africa, the UK, New Zealand, Canada, Toronto, California, New Jersey, and Israel. And it was about 10 o'clock at night. It was Saturday night. It was the first day off I had from work in 2 years. And I was wide awake all of a sudden. My eyes were wide open. I read so many articles I never read before this moment. I watched every video I could find. I called people I never even met before when I never would do that because I had social anxiety. And they gave me a lot of tips on how to hypnotize somebody for persuasion purposes, for sales, for influence. And it's 8 a.m. in the morning. I'm excited. I have off from work, but I'm ecstatic. So I run to work. Now, I had a bike a month before this happened, but the bike got stolen. So I run to work. My boss is there, and he's like, "Chris, take your day off." And I go, "Just open the door." Opens the door. 10 minutes later, about 15 people pile into the gym. I grab 7 people by the shirt, and I pull them into the office, and I lock the door. And I tell myself, no one's leaving till everyone buys. And it was more for them than for me. It was more from an impact standpoint. But 2 hours later, I closed about $11,000 in sales in fitness training, which is pretty damn hard to do in a gym, at least in the median salary area where I was. And the boss was so thrilled that he gave me $5,500 in cash. He's like, "You know what, Chris? You deserve this." Took it, went to the bank, took it out, gave it to me. He's like, I ran away. And he was like, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to go find a home." I met up with a friend who was a real estate agent. I gave them $3,000. I said, "Listen, here's $3,000. Forge my signature. Get me a shelter. Give me a place to stay. I don't care how dingy it is, but I got to go take care of some things." And then he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to IKEA." "Why?" "Because I want a flat surface to lay on." I go to IKEA and I spend the whole day moving furniture into this brand new apartment, which was a little dingy. And it was like a month-to-month lease, but I didn't care. I was happy to have a place. And at nighttime, that abusive girlfriend we talked about earlier, she called me back up. She was out with a friend. And she said, "Listen, we have to fix things. You have to fix things." And that was the ongoing pattern. I said, why? She said, because Paul said we need to see other people. I remember hanging my head and just rubbing my eyebrows and thinking, who the f- is Paul? I had no idea who Paul was. Turns out she was cheating on me, but I didn't even care. I wasn't affected by it. I wasn't even brought. I was too empowered by my own thoughts at that point, because within 24 hours, I managed to go from being on the streets, zero money in my bank account, so super low confidence, super low self-esteem, anxious, depressed, and then systematically manufacture a miracle. And now I have a roof over my head, food in my belly, money in the bank account, confidence in my heart, self-esteem in my soul, and I'm empowered. So I told her to surgically remove me from her life. I said, delete my phone number, my MySpace. We had MySpace back then. Any food, not any food, any clothes or things I own that you have, keep it, sell it, burn it, throw it away. I don't care. It's not mine anymore. It's yours. And please never call me again. And I ended that. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life. A week later, I opened up my first private fitness studio. We stayed open for 6 years. Some months we would have 6-figure months offline in a 3-mile square radius town where the median salary was $37,000 a year. And there's only 2 of us. And after that, I wrote one of 3 books, soon to be a 4th book. I broke in 2 Guinness World Records based on the very foundational things that I used to get my ass in a better place, 12, 13 years ago. And now I'm studying for 2 PhDs. I run a rehab center, and I speak at corporations, and I love every minute of it. And for me now, it's effortless. It's kind of effortless. There's some effort, but there's no, hard work. It's just passion.
Wow, I really appreciate you sharing that story, and I appreciate your candor. And I didn't know that to the extent about you, having only known you for a little bit less than a month now, but I truly appreciate you sharing that with us. So here's a different question for you. How do you define success?
Success. I would say success is internal for everybody. So I think success is a specific, unique definition for everybody, but similar to the definition of leadership, the definition of success for for each person would change over time. So the best definition I can give you, or anyone listening, is my current definition of success. But tomorrow that might even change. And I would say right now, success is sticking to your word, even when it seems freaking impossible. That's one part of the definition for me, at least right now. A second part of that is having an idea, a desire, and staying so focused until you actually get that thing.
No, I like that. And that's something that we talk about quite often on our show, is the definition of success. And I think you hit it on the head, is everybody has their own different and unique definition of success. And one thing you mentioned I thought is spot on was the fact that it changes. I think when you're 20, not that it needs to be about money or family or anything like that, but when you're 20 versus 30 versus 40, your definition should change, because when you hit different levels of success, and it's not just a monetary piece, and now don't get me wrong, there is a monetary component to it, but it's not all it's about. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. If you had to, Chris, define yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, you know what? There's a Hindu god. His name is Hanuman. He's a monkey god. And ever since I was a teenager, I would have certain people say that I remind them of Hanuman because my energy is the same. So it's like a playful, strong and bold energy. So it's like there's a story of Hanuman where Ram, the Hindu god, his brother was sick and they needed a certain flower from this mountain far, far away on Mount Kailash, I believe it was. And Hanuman flew out there. He forgot what kind of flower it was, but he was in a rush. So in the midst of confusion, he decided to lift the entire mountain and bring the whole mountain back where he came from. And he said, I don't know which one it was, but it's somewhere in here. That's similar, like it's like a shotgun approach to results. So that's kind of that's my kind of energy. Like I'm bold. I don't let anybody screw with me, but at the same time, I show up with as much love as possible. So if I had one word to describe me, I would say Hanuman.
How do you spell that?
Hanuman. Oh no, Hanuman. Hanuman. Yeah, A-N at the end.
I appreciate it. So one thing we're always looking to do is add value to our listeners. And I was curious if you have either a morning or a daily ritual that you swear by.
Yes, there is. You know how some people do affirmations and things like that. I personally fucking hate affirmations because the brain does not work that way. The brain works with questions first and foremost. And just like you mentioned, we talked a minute ago before the call about that marriage counseling video I made, and how when somebody is angry in a therapy room, and if they're given the space to vent. Now I'm telling you this is the precursor to the morning ritual. Is if they yell and yell and yell and they let out the emotion and they scream it out, they'll eventually they're in a high sympathetic state, a high stress response. If that stress response is too high, your body turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, which brings you back down from the stress. It's your unconscious mind way of handling an emotion that it feels it cannot handle by itself, which is, it's not true. But when you push your body to that limit, you give that emotion a lot of power, so that in the future, that emotion can come back twice as strong. You have less control over it, and it happens way more often. This is the pimple theory of emotions, that if you have a negative emotion, you have to let it out. But when you pop a pimple, you're in a high risk of getting more pimples in that area, which emotions are very similar in that way. So in the morning, the first thing I do is ask myself questions. I ask questions like, what can I do to make sure that today is the best day ever? If it rains, so what? What can I do about today? So that when the day is over, I did the best I can, and I'm so completely happy with that. The next thing is that when I get up, what I'll do is a set of affirmations and a set of goals that I set for myself. Now, when I said affirmations before, I said I don't believe in affirmations. Affirmations by themselves, I don't think they'll work. But if you link it to a parasympathetic response, your body acts a very different way. So when you run an emotion, the more you use that emotion, similar like on a PC, if you open Microsoft Word 5 times in a week, your PC will pin that program to your toolbar so that it's more accessible for you because you've been there so often. It makes it easier for you to access those programs. So same with emotions. So first thing in the morning, after asking myself to letting my imagination go in the right direction, I push my body past the stress response with joy and gratitude. And the way to do that is jumping up and down, getting yourself out of breath, and then using the affirmations and repeating your goals and getting yourself kind of in a peak state, but going so far into it that you don't just stop when you're energized, you stop when you're drained. You stop moving when you really can't, like you're so out of breath, you really can't even continue. And then once your body is so stressed out, from like sprinting towards good feelings, I'll laugh for 1 full minute. And I want to get my body so stressed out with good feelings that it initiates a parasympathetic response, similar to when somebody has a catharsis and they come down from it. I want to give myself that exact same thing, but with joy and happiness and gratitude and excitement and motivation and strength and confidence and assurance and certainty. And after doing that, my heart's racing, I'm sweating, I'm gasping for air pretty much. I'll lay down and I'll lay very still. And I make myself hypnosis tapes. So it's my own voice. And I only trust myself to do hypnosis because very few hypnotists know like the ins and outs of how to make an induction that's going to hit your unconscious. So I'll lay down, and every day I have a different induction. I make about 10 every month, and I keep them on loop. And they all have to do the same thing. So part of what I made 2 years ago, I broke 2 Guinness World Records in strength, and I used the mindset program to help me break those records. So I modified that same protocol to fit a morning routine. So now I do that every day. So that usually within the first 35 minutes of being awake, I already feel unstoppable, and it's vibrating throughout my whole nervous system, not just my thoughts. And then the day starts.
It's interesting. We've interviewed many different people from all different walks of life, different careers, and so many of them have something that they swear by. And the best thing that I love about interviewing different people is there's not one thing that works for everybody. And what I love to do is to bring different guests to the listeners just to make them think differently about things. And I think for me, that's one of the best things about doing this podcast is the opportunity to connect with so many different people that are successful in all different walks of life, but they all have different spins on things. So I really appreciate you sharing what you do and why you do it, because I think that's another important thing is not just what people do, but some of the reasons why they do it, how they do it, and the reason that they continue to do it is because obviously it's been successful. And one of the things that we always talk to our listeners at the end of our show is we have a call to action or a question of the day just where we want to pose something to make them think a little bit outside the box. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Here's a different question for you. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. Man. If I could have dinner with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be? You know what I think it would be? I think it would be Voltaire.
And the reason why would be?
Back when I was 12, I was interested in learning how to pick up girls because as a 12-year-old boy turning into a teenager, I thought to myself that if I'm going to have any problems in life, there better not be any problems with women. So I was on my way learning pickup artist stuff as a teenager. But there's these quotes by Voltaire that kept popping up. And there was one guy, turned out to be a hypnotist, and he used hypnosis in that way. He kept quoting Voltaire. And one thing Voltaire said, and now when I say this quote, whoever's listening, don't take it the wrong way. It has nothing to do with women or men. It has more to do with the mindset behind it. And that always intrigued me. He said something like, give me 5 minutes face to face and I can bed the Queen of England. Basically, he can use his words and persuasive skills to get pretty much anything he wants. And it doesn't matter what his skill set is, how much experience he's had. If he wants something, he doesn't take a brute strength approach and like an old school 10,000 hour approach. He meets the person where this is what I got after years of thinking this. I thought of someone can go to school, become a doctor, put in 35 years of experience, maybe get on a TV show, maybe save someone's life, maybe impact somebody. Or you can meet people where they're at. They tell you what they need and what they want. You can ask them what it looks like when they even have that thing so they can recognize it. And then you can simply give it to them. And you're creating a 10x impact on the world in literally a fraction of the time. And plus there's like 10,000 other ways I look at that quote, but Voltaire was somebody, I feel like he got it. I feel like he could have been a lot more popular, a lot more famous even now, had he simply wanted to. But I don't think he wanted to. And I find that so badass. Like everyone's into Seneca nowadays because Tim Ferriss, brought it all back. And there's all these new books on Seneca. Elliot Hulse brought up Ralph Waldo Emerson because he was a big fan of Emerson. Me, I like Voltaire. I like Voltaire because he can use his strength, but he can also use his wit. And the wit will always get somebody a lot further than the strength.
I like that. That's an interesting perspective on that. In 30 seconds or less, what is the best advice you've ever received?
You know what? I think the best advice would be something like this. Mother Teresa has a quote: "Don't invite me to an anti-war rally. Invite me to a peace rally." And which means, don't fight fire with fire. If you don't like negativity, don't fight it with negativity. Don't be offended by someone's anger. Don't be offended by someone's lewdness. Be joyful that we have choices instead. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you got there or why you're there. What matters is what are you going to do about it? That's all that matters. So even if you have a lifelong fear of something, it doesn't matter why. It matters is what resource do you need to add to this to get what you need to get or what you want to get.
That's one of my favorite quotes actually of all time, and I think it's so simplistic when you think about it. Is everybody wants to do anti-something, and what happens a lot of times is you actually put things in favor of that, as opposed to what you want to do is you want to celebrate what you do want, as opposed to an anti-war. And so, as you said, is then you go to a peace rally, and I think that's just so interesting when you think about it. And that same quote has been spoken about, how elections have been won or lost because people spend so much time, money, and effort anti somebody, and what they end up doing is putting a lot of time, effort, money, and thought into that person that they don't want to win.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? When that comes back to even my morning routine we went over before, is that I'm not focusing on like using my willpower to force, I am happy. I am cool. I'm not like angry about it. I'm like, yes, I am happy. Like, I'm letting go. I'm surrendering to happiness. I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to look for happiness. I'm not going to use, if someone's angry and they want to let it out, to be unangry. It makes no sense. You just start by not being that thing. Be something else instead. There's that guy Thich Nhat Hanh. He has a walking meditation, and he says, like, every breath you take, one full breath in is 3 steps. One full breath out is 3 steps. And every step should be the most joyful step of your life, sending it into the ground and infecting the earth with your joy. He says, but if you can't take a joyous step right now, then you can't possibly take a joyous step in the future. You have to take a joyous step, and you have to be in joy now. With emotions, there's no past or future. There's only now. So if you want to be something, you got to be that now. And as illogical as that sounds, that's how your emotions work. So it's all, that quote actually is underlying to how I do anything. It's like, if I'm not going to be joyful doing it, I'm not going to do it. End of story.
No, I like that. Now, Chris, before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, when life gets tough, when things seem impossible, get curious. When it seems like there's no solution, the solution is curiosity. You can, like, if somebody comes to you with a problem, for example, and they say, I have this issue, and I've been to so many therapists and friends about it, and they all agree, and like, I have no solution. And it might even convince you, like, wow, this person has no solution. They're screwed. The correct answer is, I'm curious. I'm curious to figure out, what are you not aware of yet? I'm curious as to what the blind spots are. I'm curious as to what you don't know. And that's the way out of the helplessness, is to be curious. So to get out of helplessness, to get out of stagnation, get curious.
I like that. That's great advice. And then last question, I promise it's the easiest one. For our listeners that are interested in connecting with you or following you, what's the best way for them to do so?
So I would like to offer a gift to your viewers. I've never done this before. I recently started a group. It's a private group called 90 Days of Thriving. It's a secret group. And basically I help people create performance-based goals using that world record formula I've mentioned before, the mindset program. As long as it's a performance-based goal, whether it's in business, relationships, income, health, or any other area of life, it's a 90-day course that breaks down every piece of the mindset, so that by the end of it, you have every tool you need to create your own mindset program that could potentially be better than anyone I've ever created or anyone else ever created. And it's free. The only way to get into it, though, is to add me on Facebook and request it privately, because people pay for this course a pretty penny. So for you guys listening in, it's completely free. Don't tell the people that have paid for it. No, I'm kidding. But the best place to find that will be go to my Facebook, which is facebook.com/Chris the Hypnotist.
That's my Facebook page.
Really? Chris the Hypnotist?
I'm Chris the Hypnotist 1.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not.
Oh man, that'd be cool.
Well, listen, Chris, it's been great having you on the show today. I truly appreciate not only your candor, but some of the great advice that you've offered. I definitely will suggest that our listeners take you up on that free offer. I think that's amazing, and we've had some really cool guests that have offered free things to our listeners, so I truly appreciate it. And the last thing I just want to do is just thank you again for some of the thoughts and the ideas you had, and I really appreciate it, and hopefully some of our listeners will take some of what you said to heart and really try to improve different areas of their lives.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. I'm so grateful for impacting your audience, and thank you for allowing me to say these things, because it's getting me in a peak state, just talking about it.
I really appreciate it, my man. Thank you for listening to episode number 94. Although you might not agree with everything that Chris said, it would be impossible to mistake his passion for what he does and why he does it. When we spoke about morning rituals, Chris has his very specific routine that works for him. A common theme throughout our episodes has been the importance of some type of daily or morning consistent schedule. Chris is no different, as he believes in meditation and being grateful and starting off his day positively. Chris spoke about one thing that really stood out to me, and that was the importance of asking yourself questions. In his closing remarks, he said something that I thought was spot on. Chris said that when life gets tough and it seems insurmountable, get curious and ask questions. That's great insight that leads me to our call to action for today. If you are not where you want to be today in and or with your life, don't make excuses, don't accept those excuses, and instead ask yourself questions. It's within those answers where you not only find what you're looking for, but you'll also find your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.